Okay, Tim, we all in the specialty coffee community know that who you are and what have you done and are you doing in this industry. For me, all of this is amazing. Unfortunately, part of the industry, I'm talking about the small holders and small farmers, they actually don't know who you are and what are you doing. So according with your knowledge and experience, what is something that most of the unexperienced farmers like my family should work in the next years to have better quality of coffee?
Well, that's a very complex because I would say that not all farmers have potential to grow quality. For example, in Colombia, if your farm is situated in a low altitude or if you have varieties that are not tasting great, it doesn't really help to process the coffee more carefully or do only right picking if the potential is not there. So first of all, I always recommend for a small farmer, if they want to start with specialty, don't start with the whole farm. Figure out if you have potential first and do some small experiments, pick maybe 1 or 2 bags where you are very careful with the cherry selection, so we only have ripe cherries, where you're very careful with the processing, not to over ferment the coffee. And I always recommend to wash the coffee to see the potential, because or like eco pulpers or something like that, and not to do naturals or honey coffees to see the potential, because if you have extremely good coffee, you don't really need to add any more flavor. The flavors are already there. And then if you have potential, then of course you can convert your whole farm towards a more quality-driven system. I'm working with a farmer in Colombia who has 60 hectares, but 20 hectares with coffee. And we implemented a regime where we only pick ripe cherries. We do sorting before we deliver the cherries. We're very careful with processing. We dry the coffee slowly in shade so it's not overheating. The problem is, I would say, for the first 3 years, most of his coffees were not special. So the quality was only average. Yes, it was more consistent, but it was still very average. So it was hard for us to sell the coffee for a higher price, because there's a higher cost processing coffee in a more careful way. Only this year we've gotten the quality to go up a little bit more. It's still not 90 points. It's gone from 83 points in average to 85.5, which for us is a big deal. And we've done that by fertilizing better, taking better care of the trees, improving the picking even more. But still, it's very hard to sell this coffee for the price that he needs to cover the costs. So right now we have decided that the first picking and the last picking he does, he's just gonna process like normal commercial coffee. And whatever he picks in the peak of the harvest, where you have a lot of coffee, he's gonna process it more carefully and do selective picking. The reason for this is we found that the first picking and the last picking at this particular farm rarely taste very good. So then it doesn't make sense to spend all the energy trying to make it better when it's not a good product. And that's the same a little bit with looking for potential. If you have a farm at, say, 1100 meters, and it doesn't help to pick the ripest cherries, it doesn't help to do the good processing, the coffee is probably not going to be fantastic anyway.
I understand.
So the alternatives for a farmer in low altitude might be to focus more on yields, focus on different varieties that suits the climate better. But if you have a high altitude and you feel that you have potential, I would suggest, if you want to work with coffee, to diversify. So a lot of times you go to a farm and they will have 2 or 3 varieties maximum, maybe just one, and it might not be the best variety for the best quality. So try to get seeds and plant different things to see what the market wants. I also realized that like honey coffees are very popular in Costa Rica. I'm not a big fan of it myself, but I have a farmer that I buy from in El Salvador, and he doesn't have the best altitude. So the best coffee is he's on a volcano. On top of the volcano, he gets very good coffee. But on the rest of the volcano, the coffee is very average. But he has a client that really likes natural coffees, so he decided to process them like naturals, and now he's getting a much higher price for the low quality coffees, and the customer is happy and the farmer is happy.
Yeah.
So there's a market for many different things, and I think, but I think, for me, the best quality coffee, if you have the best quality from the farm and the soil and the climate, there's no point to alter the quality by doing a natural process or adding ferment flavor, which you normally do with honey.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
It's a long answer.
Yeah. And then, so I want to ask you also, like we know you're getting your hands dirty in Colombia. And can you tell the farmers and me briefly what is this future project about? Like, some of the magazines make it look like a future project. And why Colombia? You're saying you don't know too much about farming coffee, but it seems you're doing much better than other farmers. What are missing these farmers? And so you consider yourself now a producer?
Not yet, because I'm not producing coffee yet. But I consider myself a soil manager now. So I try to manage the soil where my coffee plants are planted. They're not doing well now. They need a lot of nutrients. But I think I know how to fix it. Well, I'm taking classes, so this is an organic farming project. But I don't know if it's going to work. I think it will work.
Yeah.
And I believe it will work, but I have to prove it first. But for me, it's more about managing the soil so it's healthy, so that the plants can grow in it.
Yeah.
I don't consider myself a coffee producer yet. Maybe in 3 years, if the coffee trees don't die, maybe. But I don't know anything about farming. I know some things about processing and drying coffee and how to get a better quality product in terms of picking, processing and drying.
Yeah.
But in terms of getting a better quality from the actual coffee tree itself, I don't know a lot. And I don't think there's a lot of people who know a lot either. The research that I've come across tends to focus more on yields and plant health rather than the actual flavor in the cup. So we're researching with a mineral fertilizing company, a Norwegian fertilizing company. We're researching different applications of fertilizer, trying to see if there's a difference in the cup. As I mentioned, in Colombia, we managed to raise the quality of the coffee on the farm that I work with there by 2.5 points on average, which is for me a big deal. I mean, it went from a normal commercial coffee to be something, it's not spectacular, but it's sweet and has a little bit of character. And just by making sure we fertilize in a good way, and so on. The reason why I chose Colombia was because Colombia is very uniform, at least it used to be. Up until very recently, most of the farmers were planting Catura, Variedad Colombia, now Castillo. But they're all doing more or less the same varieties. They're all processing more or less in the same way, with a small demucilage remover or a depulper and then fermentation. Of course there are variations, but one thing they have in common is that organic coffee is not very common. Only in the north you will see indigenous people doing organic, and of course there are some producers here and there doing it. But the Colombian Coffee Growers Federation has been training and preaching how to do technical farming, which means high density farming, high yields. And I'm trying to do the opposite, low density, so less trees per hectare, still good yields, organic with shade. And my motivation is to prove that you can, if you want to grow quality, growing the technical high yield way is not the best way to do it. Maybe lower yields is better. And it's just ideas that I have from the wine world, and it's hard to tell a farmer when you go and visit a farmer that you have to take out every 2 trees you have to take out, and you have to plant shade, and your yields will drop, and there's no guarantee that the quality will be there. So
a lot of risks.
Yeah, so that's why I chose Colombia, because there's a lot of comparison, even to the neighboring farm that I bought from, and I'm still buying from. I'm going to plant the same varieties to see if we can actually increase the quality at the same altitude just by farming differently.
What varieties?
So I'm growing Typica and Geisha there, but I'm also planting Caturra, the same Caturra that the farmer I'm working with having. So I'm taking seeds from him. The reason why I chose Caturra is because it's not resistant, so you will have more trouble with leaf rust. And I believe there are alternative ways of dealing with leaf rust rather than just planting resistant varieties.
Yeah, I actually I want to ask you about the leaf rust, like, because do you know how can we like kind of control this?
Maybe. I have
Is there
to
a
prove
way?
it first.
Yeah, are you trying to?
There are theories out there that has worked on other type of plants that have similar kind of diseases, fungus attacks and stuff. There are some people who are spraying what we call aerated compost tea, which is basically you make a tea out of a compost that is very good compost. Compost can be terrible and it can be very good, and it can be average. Depends on how you make it and so on. So if you make a properly good compost, you extract the organisms into the tea, you spray it on the leaves, then you colonize the leaves with microorganisms.
Okay.
They will feed on the leaves, not eating the leaves, but the leaves actually sweat sugars. That is food for the organisms. And once you have like a leaf rust, which is a pathogenic fungus that wants to attack the leaf, there is no place for it to start growing because it's already occupied by good organisms that don't hurt the tree. And the tree is healthy, so pathogens are there to remove sick